With all eyes on the triggering of Article 50 tomorrow, there are other changes that will affect Gibraltar coming up. The signs of the introduction of the Schengen Border Code are evident. Electronic improvements have been made at the frontier. The worry now is whether the code will give Spain a legitimate excuse for illegitimate delays.
Well, we've always been very concerned about whatever the way in which Spain operates the border. We had the European Commission here on missions in 2014, again in 2015, and the first report in 2013. So they've been here 3 times already precisely to regulate flow at the border. There, it was determined that there should be targeted checks only of people who they suspected and whose passports they felt needed to be checked. What the EU is doing now globally is moving from those targeted checks to systematic checks as a standard. Now, there are a number of safeguards. For example, member states conducting checks have to provide adequate resources at the border. So there have to be enough officials carrying out the checks or enough of those automatic machines carrying out the checks. There's also provision for frontier workers or regular commuters, people who cross the border on a regular basis, to be waved through without actually checking them if the frontier guards recognize who they are. And there's also an evaluation mechanism, which allows the European Commission to evaluate the way each member state is conducting the checks, and if necessary to act on any deficiency, including sending European border guards to that particular frontier if they feel the checks are not being conducted properly. Because although the provision is for systematic checks, they also want to make sure it's done in a way that does not cause undue delay to people crossing from the non-Schengen to the Schengen area or vice versa.
The agenda has been pushed by member states who have suffered terrorist attacks. With the UK and therefore Gibraltar not in Schengen, it's had little input into the code. There is scope for an evaluation report, although following Brexit, anything British may not exactly be flavour of the month with European institutions. But just how much do we know of what's going to be happening?
Well, the information available to the government is that at the moment the Spanish machines read all EU passports, and they read Spanish ID cards only. So Spain has assured us that they're going to upgrade the machines so that they read all other EU ID cards as well. So presumably that is something that will happen. At the moment, they only read all EU passports and only Spanish identity cards. I think that part of the problem was when they introduced these machines in July of 2015, that there was no notice given, and people suddenly found themselves in huge queues to get in and to get out of Gibraltar, faced with 13 automatic border control gates that nobody had heard of or seen or expected to find. Now, behind the gates, as you know, there is a booth available for a policeman to be able to sit there in case that there are problems or in case they apply one of these exemptions which allow you to wave people through without checking them against the database. We'll need to see how that works and what happens.
You don't know anything about cars and motorbikes either, because they, of course, what's going to happen there in terms of using machinery?
Well, the code specifically says that people should not be made to get out of vehicles in order to check their identity. We know the Spaniards have put up at the border these cameras already, automatic cameras and number plate recognition cameras, with a barrier which suggests that every car might be stopped by this barrier while they take a picture, and then it allows you through. We need to wait and see what happens.
The government says lessons were learned with the excessive border queues 4 years ago, and Gibraltar could now supply the European Commission with up-to-date information if there are disproportionate delays which the regulations don't allow for. It would file a complaint, it says, which could lead to an evaluation of how the border works.